Hi, my name is Jeff Teolis.
My name's Martin Robbins.
And look at us. We're here at Expo. Well, kind of, as best as we could.
Yeah, I had actually planned on coming to Expo in person this year, so this is as good for me, I guess.
Kudos to Rob Burke for putting this together because obviously with coronavirus and the certain stages we are all around the world, we're not able to be there in northern or just north of Chicago. And I'd like to be there because, I could be watching the Cubs in the playoffs, if they're still in the playoffs at the time of this recording. But the point is, there's so many great things I love about coming to Chicago. The deep dish pizza, the Garrett's popcorn. But of course, Pinball Expo is just such a great staple and everyone gathering there together and watching seminars. So now we're doing it online, virtually.
So here we are. And why would we be talking to people on this virtual Pinball Expo?
I assume it's about growing facial hair during coronavirus or not getting haircuts. I don't know. It's maybe one of those two things, but more likely it's because we are quote unquote seasoned veterans when it comes to podcasting. And
Correct.
There are a lot of people getting into podcasting, certainly during the last 6-7 months. It's not as hard as you think, and we're going to give you some tips on that.
We are going to be talking to people about how you can start up a podcast. We're going to, give you some of the magic behind the scenes on what it takes to do a podcast. But we're also going to talk about why would you want to do a podcast in the first place?
Big bucks is the answer really quickly to that. We may have not seen those big bucks yet, but that's another story.
Yeah.
Just a little bit about ourselves for those who may not know. My name is Jeff Teolis. 4 years ago, in fact, 4 years ago in October, I was covering the World Series. It was in Chicago. It was in Cleveland. And being in Chicago, you're right there. I thought, I'm going to go stop by Stern Pinball. And I did. And I was able to interview Steve Ritchie and some others. Recorded it as simple as on my phone. That's how easy it was. I just turned on the mic, sat in the cafeteria, talked to Steve for 10, 15 minutes. There's my recording. Had no notes, but had the idea I wanted to do this podcast eventually where I was talking to people. And that's kind of how Pinball Profile was born. And, 4 years later, almost 300 shows later, it still continues. I still talk to people all over, whether it's on Skype, whether it's on video, and we just play the audio, or live at events. So that's kind of how Pinball Profile was born. But you have some familiarity, too, as far as head-to-head pinball, something you started years ago with Ryan C.
Well, this is correct. And I stood on the shoulders of giants to start head-to-head. I mean, I was listening to Pinball Profile. There were a lot of great podcasts out at the time, probably not as many now. There was a podcast called Pinheads, just top-notch, and they decided to have a bit of a break. And I thought to myself, well, Australia, it has such a big pinball culture. We have for many years, probably the sun, the surf, and the pinball. Those things sort of all came together. So I thought, what, why not do an Australian podcast? And I contacted a friend. I say a friend, somebody I'd met twice, but I knew was a massive pinhead. We could both talk, and that was Ryan C. We got together and we decided to do head-to-head pinball podcast. And that was, I think, probably about 3 years ago, and maybe 120 odd episodes that we did until we then did Final Round.
Yeah, so the Pinball Network started up earlier this year, and they contacted us about doing a podcast, maybe a little bit with a gearing towards competition pinball, because both Martin and myself have played many competitions. We are both members of the IFPA. Martin, you actually run a massive IFPA tournament.
That is correct, yeah. So the Melbourne Silver Ball Championship every year, about 140 people I think we had last year. We've not going to be able to do it this year, unfortunately. I'm in Victoria in Melbourne in Australia, and we have got some pretty big restrictions here at the moment, so I can't really leave the house unless I'm going shopping. So we're not going to be doing that. But yeah, I do put on a big tournament here. There's lots of streaming that we do with it as well. International guests come over, so yeah, it's great.
So we have a little bit of background when it comes to playing, whether it comes to organizing. I ran this Pinball Profile World Tour event. I was in 10 different cities in 4 different countries, including Australia. And that was something I did almost a year ago. So I really like the competitive nature of pinball, and that's what we thought we would kind of focus on the show. But the show is turned into, as a lot of podcasts do, they kind of evolve. You kind of find what your strengths and weaknesses are, and then we also add the element of something we taken from Pinball Profile and from Head to Head Pinball. We bring on guests as well too, and that's the great thing about podcasting. Here I am in Canada. Here you are in Australia. Our guests can be anywhere in the world, and we all come together in an audio sense on a podcast, and it's pretty seamless. I mean, there's a lot of editing, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But, you can do so much with podcasting, and the great thing is there's a lot of people interested about pinball, so you kind of figure out what your niche is going to be when it comes to podcasting.
Correct. And as you said, we started with a competition or tournament angle, but what we sort of realized, I think even on the first episode, competition is between you and the machine, you and your friends. We just wanted to be able to get people more into the competitive spirit, whether it is with themselves or with other people. How can you get better scores on a pinball machine? What are some of the designers thinking that we've interviewed when they're designing a pinball with the player in mind, and how you can actually get better at playing pinball? And that's the evolution of Final Round Pinball Podcast.
And one thing that you and I certainly like to do in our general lives or in the format of podcasts, we like to inject a little bit of humor once in a while, and whether it's taking shots at each other or having fun with the guests, that I think keeps us entertained as podcasters too. It makes us kind of keep coming back. And I know every time I'm ready to record with you, I'm thinking, how can I get Martin? What can I throw off?
And you do that quite well. And it's probably for the outsider looking in, saying podcasting is easy. Talking for a lot of people is easy. Some of the stuff that we do behind the scenes is, can be quite challenging. But more so, it's quite time consuming. And the reason why I bring that up is that the reason why we do like to have a joke on the podcast is because I think if it was serious for us, all the work that we have to do behind the scenes, it then becomes a second job. So we wanted to keep it light. We wanted to talk about some funny aspects of pinball. But the main thing we want to do is we just want to entertain.
Yeah, for sure. And we have to be thinking, if I can entertain Martin with things I'm saying and vice versa, we're probably doing that to a listener or two or thousands as it may be. And we really enjoy it. We enjoy the feedback as well too. And also there's the big bucks we talked about too. One thing we joke around on Final Round, we have a sponsor of the week. And I don't know if I should let this out of the bag here on Virtual Pinball Expo, but they might be fake. I'll deny it. You. I know you can show the video. I'm going to deny it. We're getting the big bucks, and I'm sticking to it. So, but you know what? That's again part of that humor we like to do. It's something different, and hopefully it's rewarding to the people listening.
And so, Jeff, what are some of the topics that the podcasts out there do at the moment? Obviously, we do competitive pinball, and I know that there's some other competitive, but what sort of other topics are there out there as far as pinball podcasts go? And this is for you that are watching this, whether you're thinking, I want to listen to a podcast, but I don't know which one to go, or whether you want to start up a podcast.
Well, I think a lot of the bulk of what you hear is kind of the news of the week. As pinball has evolved in the last 10 years, really exponentially from just single company or very few companies to many companies, there's a lot more news. And, the podcasters, it's good show prep, as you will call it. And they certainly give their reactions and talk about current releases, code updates, tournaments, what's going on in the pinball world. So that's kind of easy fodder, if you will, to be able to have something to talk about. It's been difficult with certainly less competitions and maybe less releases over the past, again, 6-7 months. But this is just a blip. There's certainly a lot of content. I mean, just go on to a forum website like Pinside and see all the different topics. You could pick any one of those angles, whether it could be making a homebrew game, whether it's repairs, whether it is news, whether it's what's going on right locally in your community. And there are podcasts that do that as well. It's endless what you can do.
Correct. And your podcasts about older era machines as well, like solid states and EMs, and even bingo games. There's podcasts for that as well. So there is a lot of different varieties when it comes to pinball. You'll find something that you like. And you know what? If you don't like it, we're not going to get offended. Don't worry. Maybe.
Well, that's the thing too, again. But, we did mention earlier, so now you've got an idea for a topic. Now you've got an idea for a podcast. Are you going to do it solo, or are you going to do it with, a co-host like Martin and I do? And those are big decisions to make when you start. Maybe you can add a co-host later, but I know doing Pinball Profile as an example, if I were to just talk and have no guests, it would be difficult for me personally. There are podcasters that do that and can rant and talk and be really eloquent for 30 minutes, an hour. It's difficult to do. I like to bounce off somebody. I'm personally, I'm really interested in what they have to say, for one thing, too, just to maybe get a different angle and see what their, thoughts may be. But so in that sense, that is my co-host, my guest. But, whether it was years with you and Ryan or Joe or whomever or each other here, it's kind of, I find easier to have somebody to bounce off of, because one thing that happens in podcasting, and we've seen this, is there is a burnout factor as well, too. For whatever reason, Dennis Creasel made a note a long time ago that after about a year and a half, it's like, okay, it either becomes work for them or a chore or just a strain that, I've got to do this again. It should never be that when you're podcasting. If it is, maybe it's not for you.
Correct. But even when you were going back to News of the Week, we were doing a weekly podcast on Head to Head, and it wasn't every week that you would get a great amount of news to report on. So there was a lot of preparation getting your topics presented to each other and then being able to actually talk about it, sometimes for 3 hours. Some of our podcasts were. But you're right. I think it's good to have somebody that you can bounce off. So if you're wanting to really, dip your toe in there and see how it is, find somebody that you already naturally have great conversations with pinball, and maybe just one day stick a phone in front of you and record the conversation and listen back to it and think to yourself, could that become a podcast? And I agree with you. I think doing it solo, I would love to be able to do it solo. I find that is much harder. So my hat goes off to those people that can do it solo.
Yeah, for sure. So maybe now you've got an idea. Okay, this is what I want to talk about this week, or in general in podcasting. Now you've got to have the equipment to do that. And it's not as difficult as we talked about. I said I started off by using just my cell phone, a free app that records voice, that you can even do editing on the phone. In fact, we'll talk about a little story later on about an entire radio show I did on this phone here. It's interesting, but the point is, you need to have a microphone, and in this case, you have a headset there, so that's easy. I'm talking into, I'll bring it up a little bit here. I've got a little microphone here. I don't know if you can see that. Maybe you can.
There you go.
It's,
with a pop filter in front of it for those people that don't know. So all those pops. I've got I prefer a headset because I like to move around when I'm talking, and when I'm deep in thought, I'm over here deep in thought. But I've also got a pop filter on my microphone as well to minimize some of the pops for a near field microphone.
I also have seen people buy things like this, and I made a purchase too of this Snowball microphone. So you see a lot of streamers use these as well too. They should be paying us for this big plug here on.
Maybe they will.
Expo,
They'll send them through. I hope.
So then you need the software too. Okay, I now know how to record it. Well, where do I put it on? Well, on the internet, there are many free sites too. Audacity is one I know a lot of podcasters use. It's a simple editing tool, and there's some great videos on YouTube that can teach you how to edit your podcasts. But that's a nice way to really do this without any great expense. You can get into other programs, Reaper.fm, you've got Adobe Edition. There are all kinds out there. But again, if you just want to get it started, something like Audacity is a good thing too. And if you're interviewing somebody like we are right now, we do a lot of our interviews on Skype, and Skype can give you video like you're seeing right now, but it can give you just audio. And we, for podcasts, just use the audio. And there are free MP3 Skype recorders. Again, great ways to edit your show. But I'll give you a good example. The Pinball Nerds podcast. Hello to Orbital Albert, a fellow Canadian. He did the first 200 plus episodes, everything on his phone, right into, I think he was playing music on his, he had like an iPad or a laptop beside him, would press play, and it still worked. In fact, there was something cute about it too. And so anything you can do to get the audio out, that's how you do it.
Absolutely. And when you were coming back to, we're talking about Audacity and we call them wave editing programs, that can be quite daunting as well, because the first thing that you'll do when you load up your audio is you will see these wave files and you think, what am I going to do with this? And that can be quite daunting at first, but it really doesn't take too long for you to understand how to edit wave files, how to remove things like pauses, or if you make a mistake, like we've done many times in this video right now, how you can...
Once, maybe maximum.
How you can edit over the top of that so people don't know that you've done that. And that's what Jeff and I do with Final Round. Jeff does the editing for the main bulk of the show, and I edit the interviews. And we are looking for cadence, so making sure that there's the rhythm of the conversation. We take out ums and ahs and big, long pauses. When you look at this wave file for the first time, you're going to think to yourself, what do I do? YouTube clips, there's lots of tutorials on, just Google it. You'll find within the first or second time, you'll be able to edit these like a pro.
That's a good point. It's not live, and that's what the great thing about editing does. So when Martin is burping several times after his seventh gin, you can cut that out when he stumbles and falls. That can all be cut out, and it's easy to do in editing. But the point is, the editing is actually the most important thing because it's your finished product, right? So putting that extra time into it will pay off too, because, we usually kind of use a 3-to-1 ratio.
Yeah.
So if we're recording for a half an hour, it's probably going to be 90 minutes of editing because you're listening to maybe each individual file. You're cutting things out. You're listening to the cadence. Maybe you're adding a few sound effects here or there. And again, you've probably, by the time you're done editing, heard the show 4 or 5 times, maybe, or certainly aspects of it too. So it's worth it. You have to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd also encourage everybody to listen back to your show and be really super critical of your own show. Not because you want to be hard on yourself, but because you want to get better. And there is an expectation that the first show, it's not really going to be your best work. Certainly, I can't listen to the first episode of Head to Head. The audio quality wasn't great. We were still just getting to know each other, so the chemistry wasn't quite there. The editing wasn't as great as it could be. But I think by about the 10th, maybe 11th episode, round about then, we were really starting to find our groove. I'd upgraded some of the equipment. We'd upgraded the software, and it just got better over the time. And the only way we knew, really, was feedback from our listeners, which was fantastic, but also by listening back, being super critical and trying to work out how it can be better.
Yeah, that being a critic too, and having your friends maybe help you out too is a good idea as well. But listening back and hearing, I could have done that better, making some notes. There are crutches that announcers and you as a podcaster will have. There's one right there. I said the words me saying I know that Why did I say that? Me saying is me giving myself a second to think of the next thing I'm going to say. That's exactly what it is. Obviously, it's ums, ahs. And you can cut all that out in edits as well, too. So, again, you talk about listening back and being critical. The hardest podcast you will do is the first episode. Because you want it to be perfect. And I'm telling you, no matter who you are, it will not be perfect. And that's okay. In fact, the best advice I can give you is record it, edit it, distribute it. Just do it. Everyone gets easier after that. So we talk about distributing. Well, there's lots of different ways to distribute a podcast, Martin.
Yeah, correct. I mean, you've got to get it out there. And, there's obviously the forums like Pinside and Tilt Forums. Facebook is out there, Instagram, Twitter. There's a lot of Facebook communities out there as well. So tap into those communities. Ask them if it's okay to be able to start promoting your podcast. But you'll find that, like us, we listen to a lot of podcasts and we want more content as well. So I think that you will find that people are going to be very receptive to you having a new podcast. And we've seen new podcasts be released, in the last 3-4 weeks, and I welcome it. I think it's great.
One thing about our Pinball network that we're on is that they actually welcome new podcasts. So if you record something and want to get it out there, contact the Pinball network and they will help distribute it for you. So that's kind of a nice, quick way of getting it out there. And we've seen some podcasts that started on the Pinball network that has grown and grown and grown. So you don't have to do it that way. You can do it any way you'd like. But again, the base will grow and grow and grow. And people will find your podcast if you put it out there for sure. But one of the features that we always do on our podcasts, whatever ones we've done, is we like to have guests on.
Correct.
And as we said, you don't have to be side by side. We are 14 hours away from each other, and we find a way to do a podcast. And with Skype and with social media, we can bring on guests.
We can indeed, and we're going to do that right now.
And there he is, Mark Silk, right there, live and in the flesh, virtually. But
ladies and gentlemen, nice to meet me. How are you, Jeff?
It's good to see you, Mark. Thanks for joining us. And we were talking about how you can just do anything on a podcast. Marty's recording this late in the evening in Australia. It's early morning for me. It's mid-afternoon. We're cutting into your tea time, I believe.
That's why this is good. That's why this is really good.
This is great. Another reason that people, if you want to do a podcast and you want to get guests on and speak to people, it's just a great way to be social right now.
When I first met Mark was 2018 at Expo. I had just done a pinball profile and you kind of heard it and you had said, I thought, I got to be there. And you hopped on a plane. Not an easy thing to do when you're coming
That's
from
over the top, right?
Sure, yeah, okay, let's check. Birmingham, England, Chicago, yeah, good thing Chicago has a few planes there, and you made it there, and again, you just have this great love of pinball, and first of all, we want to let people know, who is Mark Silk? Because
I've never heard of me.
No. I've known who, that was the great thing, because I knew who you were before you showed up, and then when I saw you in the flesh, I was like, oh, that's great. So for those who don't know, who is this incredible voice actor that is Mark Silk?
It starts off, I'm just a fan of pinball, but I'm a voice actor over here in the UK, and I work on projects like Star Wars, and over here, Scooby-Doo! I worked with George Lucas on episode 1, recording at Abbey Road in London. There's stacks of kind of high-profile things that I tend to work on, things for the BBC and Warner Brothers, and I host things on stage too for things like Star Wars Symphonies. I hosted 2 of those at the Royal Albert Hall. Frankly, if there's something with voices in the UK, I'm probably involved in it some way. So it's commercials, theme parks, theatres. Do you remember when you used to really go to theme parks, Jeff? Wasn't that fun?
I can't remember those. But you also do British accents, funnily, because you're British.
Cool, blimey, Mary Poppins, Jelly Deals, God bless Her Majesty.
You also do American accents. So, for those people that are American, we want to hear one of your characters that's American, Johnny Bravo, possibly, and I want people to judge you on whether you've got a really good American accent.
Well, hi, Bob the Builder here. Can we fix it? Yes, we can. Come on, Scoop, Mug, Dizzy, let's build a bridge. Today we're going to build a fence. That's a useful skill for a 5-year-old, right? Come on, get your. I was the voice of Bob the Builder in America and Canada for about a decade.
Really?
Yeah, I had a guy at Comic-Con once a few years ago come up to me and say, "Don't you think it's kind of weird that the American voice of Bob the Builder is performed by a guy who was not from America but who is from England, even though the voice is for an American character for America?" And I said, I said, it's a good point. I said, did you know that the voice of Scooby-Doo isn't actually performed by a dog?
What?
And he went, oh, yeah.
The secrets we're finding out here. Hey, listen, America's Got Talent has been running for years and years. They have 4 judges. Not one of them is an American. So come on, it doesn't matter. Really.
Yeah.
It's the talent. It's acting, as we say.
It's acting. The whole thing's acting. Exactly.
But you mentioned you have this great love of pinball. That's what got you to Expo, and we appreciate you coming on the virtual Expo here with Marty and I for final round. But your pinball passion probably goes back many years, but I've seen your collection, and it's grown and grown. And what is it about pinball for you, Mark?
I think ever since I was a kid, I always loved magic, and I always loved things that were mechanical and the showmanship and lighting and all of that. And each of those elements is in pinball, and it's just that I was always drawn to the overall experience and excitement of it. Even when I was a kid, with my Tomy Atomic pinball, banging that ball around, and then it kind of grew from there. You know what? Mum and Dad would take us to the seaside here in the UK, and I grew up loving regular arcade games, but I always was really drawn to pinball. And one of my favorite games in the early 90s was something, because I loved Warner Brothers and Mel Blanc, the voice of you are despicable. This is the last time I work with someone with a speech impediment. And he was the voice of all these, Warner Brothers legendary characters. One of my favorite, please don't judge me, one of my favorite machines back then was Bugs Bunny's Pinball Bash?
Birthday Bash, I think it is.
And of course now that's considered to be possibly one of the worst pinball machines ever.
It's not great.
But it's good to be in a room next to Thunderbirds. But I really loved that game just because you could hear Mel Blanc. But then, of course, when all the arcades shut down and there was nowhere to play these things other than in a bar or pub with a beaten old machine that probably isn't set up right and was not cared for, people kind of tended to forget about this. And then with the advent of barcades, suddenly, just, as just a regular guy that likes this kind of thing, you saw pinball games again in just regular bars or regular coffee shops. And that, I was completely drawn to this, and my love of it was able to continue because you see him again. And then the first game I played on that I bumped into was Aerosmith Pinball, which isn't considered, I don't think, a particularly well-loved or well-seen or played game, but it's a great game.
It is a great game. It's actually quite well regarded.
Yeah, and so I thought, you know what, I want this game. And then this grew and grew. And like with any subject, you start going around and looking on YouTube and podcasts, and I found Jeff, and I found Todd Tuckey, and you find all of the other people that you know and enjoy day to day. Martin Roberts. You find these other people too. Marty too. And it was actually listening to Jeff, and I've told this to I've told this to you before, Jeff. I know, but it was listening to what you did and mentioning Expo that I thought, look, I like pinball. It's great fun. I'd love to hear these people who are brilliant designers, engineers, artists, just talk about it. So I flew over to Expo, and I think something that's really important that it's very easy for a lot of manufacturers to forget, or maybe even underestimate, is the real value of the influence of podcasters. Because in the end, you look at most podcasters, it's people doing stuff for free,
Not us.
and it's not their main job. They're doing something else as their main way of earning money. But in terms of influence, it's because of people like Jeff, you, Todd, name anyone else on YouTube, that you go through hearing this information and being driven to think, I want to go there. I spent whatever it was on flying from the UK to Chicago, paying to get in, buying stuff from there, buying extra luggage to put an Aerosmith topper on a plane to haul back to the UK. Not that was over the top. And, you think actually there is real value and influence in terms of people driving your excitement or understanding of this hobby. And it's very easy for people to forget just what a great job you and the other people can do and do. But I'm glad you're there, because I sit and enjoy this while I'm off doing what I do.
A very appropriate conversation, because the people that are watching this seminar right now, we are really advocates for getting people to do podcasting. That's why we want to get people into it. So we feel good about doing a podcast when people give us good feedback, not necessarily saying that we're great, more so people actually saying how much joy it gave them, or how it made them feel, and how much of a connection they formed. And I had that same thing before I was doing podcasting. I felt I knew Nate Shivers as a friend because I just heard him talk to me for so many years. That's the connection. Yeah, that's the connection that's formed.
That happened with me. I love listening to Jason Fowler. I love listening to Ken and Bill on their podcast. And then last year I was invited to go over to the party that they had over at Steve Beattie's place before the thing at Expo. And it was absolute treasure, because you're in a room full of people who's what you love. I do what I do, which is great, and I'm proud of what I do. But I was there because I wanted to talk to them and hear their stories. So it was great to meet Scott Denisian, speak to John Borg, and chat with a lot of them just about something that you like, and to hear their theories and their ideas on what makes them tick. It's more than just me, but that's the draw for me. It's, I think as another point at Expo, the thing that I loved was, I went there because it's full of pinball machines. And so, the conversation is pinball. But I bet over those 3 days that I was there, I played pinball for about an hour in total.
Yeah. Wow.
It was, I just want to chat to people and hear them talk.
And a great place to network, too, when you go to somewhere like Expo, because look, you've come full circle now.
You have.
I knew who you were before you came, but look what's happened. Now you are the voice with working with Jerry Thompson of Stern Pinball for the new Turtles game, and that is a great experience.
Excuse me just 1 second. Just making decisions where I put my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles limited edition certificate. Where should I frame that? I just want to make sure I don't lose that. Just put it down there. Jerry's awesome. I mean, Jerry, I'm a fan of Jerry's sound design. I started as a producer and an engineer, so I've done sound design for games and TV over here. So being a fan of pinball, to hear Jerry's work and then get to chat with him was great. You look at what he's done on Batman. That is an example of audio perfection. You look at what he did on Beatles. His choices in that were great. And then when I was offered the chance to work with Jerry and the team on Turtles. Are you kidding me? And also, so first of all, as a job, terrific. So it gave me an opportunity to perform 6 characters in something that I love. And I was brought in to be the voice of Splinter and Bebop and Rocksteady and We'll Get You Turtles. And then there was Baxter and Baxter Fly and Casey Jones. But so when you hit start on Turtles and you hear choose your turtle, you have chosen Marty. Jeff, shoot the left ramp. No, try better, Jeff. No, really. No, seriously, Jeff, try better. We should. So when Expo is back for real, we should start doing live commentary for Turtles and Splinter.
Yes.
That'd be awesome. Barbara, try better, Barbara. Give Marty another go.
Which was your favorite character on Turtles to do?
I really enjoyed Splinter because it was a change from larger than life characters. And he's the guy that really is the glue in the whole game, that takes you through the whole thing, that tells you what to do, when to do, and rewards you on your way. Oh, noises! Could you hear noises then? I heard technical noises. We're okay now. And we're back. My favorites were, I love doing Splinter, but also I love performing Bebop and Rocksteady because it's just, you're eating the furniture. It's Bebop and Rocksteady and total knuckleheads, that stuff. But I really enjoyed, the other thing I enjoyed more than anything was working with Jeff and Dwight Sullivan on the recording sessions. Everything for Turtles was recorded from my studio here. And with this actual microphone. How very, very exciting. And just to go through the whole process of it, there's a lot of audio in Turtles. We recorded a stack of lines. And the level of detail that we all went to get it right is probably greater than most people would understand, or they've got no reason to realize it unless we tell them. But when I got cast as these characters, the first thing I did was I watched the entire series of Turtles. I watched everything I could get my hands on from the first season to make sure that, we're recreating these original characters, but bringing them into now, and also making the performances right for the game. Because if you've got something that's very, Splinter is a very kind of mostly understated character in his performance in the show, but you want to have something a bit more driven when you're encouraging people to go for a multi-ball. If you just, it's the difference between, say, when you hear Raul Julia in Addams Family, the movie, say, Mamushka, to how you hear Raul Julia in, directed by Chris Granat, screaming Mamushka or Showtime in the actual pinball machine. That moment's iconic. And we just wanted to make as many sort of exciting moments for people as we could, really.
I think you've done a great job.
Does that help?
I didn't realize that I knew that you'd done Splinter. I didn't realize that you had done all the other characters as well.
Nor did I until I just mentioned it.
Do you know what? One thing I'm actually really impressed about, and I'm gonna be a bit fanboy here a bit, because I think that for me there's some great voice artists that I love, and one of my favorites is Billy West.
Yeah,
but you can always pick a Billy West voice. I think you can. With yours, I can't. They are so uniquely different. I can't get the Mark Silk in any of those voices. So that's what I think is genius.
That's very kind of you. I will tell Mother later. She'll be so happy. Dear Diary. Martin was so
But
nice.
how did you know you could do voiceovers? Like, for people are going, sure, he's great, he's doing these voices, but do you just wake up one day and go, oh, I can try this voice? Or were you just that guy at school that could always do those things?
I was always really musical. So I've got a decent musical ear. When I started in radio, I was a music editor and a producer and a director for other people as well. And I think when you come at it from the other side of the glass, as a director or a producer what you want from a performance. And yourself, when you're listening to a movie or a game, or you're playing pinball, you tend to know when it's wrong. You don't, you hear so many people, critiquing games, and, there's always a reason why you say, well, we all think, that's not right. They didn't handle that particularly well. But when you go up to a brand new game, you just want it to be good. You just want it to work, and you want to enjoy it. You're not there to criticize it. Same with a movie. But when something isn't right, if it's something that you genuinely love, that'll stand out like a sore thumb. But also, you might just know why it's not right. And the better thing is what you could do to make it okay. That's the thing, really. It's understanding what you can do to get the absolute best out of what you want. So I, as a producer and director, I had that kind of, you have a benchmark for what you consider is good enough. And so then when I started just to teach myself how to do it, because in radio I needed voices, and well, Jeff will know this, often you end up working by yourself on projects, and there's no one else around to do it, so you do it yourself. So I taught myself how to do it, and then just started getting little bits of work after I started to approach people. And there were projects that I didn't take on early on because I didn't think I was good enough for that particular thing yet. And then I waited until I felt I was ready. and hopefully I have a fairly decent critical ear and try to get it right. It's important to me that I get it right. It's important to me that as a fan of this, if I stood up to, a game, a pinball machine, that I would want to play it, that I would feel that it's as good as it could be for that particular moment. Have you got any favorite? What are your favorite, or do you have a favorite moment in a pinball call out or a pinball machine that you consider has terrific audio?
I think a lot of us certainly love the Lord of the Rings call-outs that we hear. I mean, they're just so passionate. And Adam's Family is really good, too. That was a good one that when you talked about Raul Julia, those are really expressive moments and fun, and something has happened exciting in pinball. What about you?
Yeah,
Marty?
look, I would echo. I think Lord of the Rings is spectacular. And its sister machine, The Hobbit. I think The Hobbit, with it's got a better, I think, audio system as well. So it's quite booming, and when Smaug is actually speaking to you, the room reverberates. I think that's a great way of you feeling immersed in the game.
I want to talk to you, Mark, about one more thing. Too, before we let you go. We appreciate you coming on here. This is wonderful. I mentioned earlier in the show that I had a neat story to talk about recording. I was in Hawaii exactly 1 year ago, and 1 year ago was the 50th anniversary of Abbey Road, the great Beatles 1969 album. So here you are recording in Abbey Road Studios, which I'm extremely envious of. I'm recording a radio show about the 50th anniversary for Abbey Road, the album. And I'm in Hawaii, and I'm like, I got to get this off. This is too important. This is such a milestone in rock. I recorded the whole thing on my phone here, the entire radio show. So we were talking about doing podcasts and what you need to do. I did it that way. I did the editing on my phone, sent it in, still enjoyed Hawaii. It was great. Got the work done. For you, some suggestions for people that might want to get into podcasting, or more so into voice acting and some of the basics you might need.
I would say do it. If you have a love of anything, when I started out, the entry level was expensive and messy. You needed a load of kit, a bag of cables, and a microphone that would have cost you quite a bit for a decent sound. Now, if you have a tablet or a phone and a USB mic, you could, like you said, Jeff, you could even use this to start off with. Whoop, there you are, that. But if you've got a USB mic, just to get started, you've got something that you can make sound pretty good, and you've got a potential global audience. You look at people who are very successful podcasters, the people that you will listen to regularly. Chances are they haven't had to spend a great deal of money on kit. Over time, I invested and did do that with mine. But you saying about what you did for the Abbey Road project, Jeff, when I went to Expo, here's what I did. I took my iPad with me and a little USB mic. It was an iRig Pro. That's it. It's a tiny little microphone. It's not the best microphone in the world. It's not like this thing. This is like something you'll find at Abbey Road. But this iRig Pro was just something that was good enough for me to plug in the iPad and sound okay. When I was at Expo, in the hotel there, I recorded 2 national TV commercials for the UK.
Did you put like pillows around to deaden the sound?
I built a pillow fort. Basically, I had a message to say, are you free to record these things for, all over the UK? And the answer is, yes, please. So I get the script up on the iPad. I built you need the acoustics to sound decent around you. I mean, over here in the studio, there's, can we see that? There's lots of acoustic pads and things all over the place to make sure that it's a nice dead acoustic sound. So kids at home, when you are recording your podcast, one of the things that can be really off-putting is when you've got audio in a really echoey room. So for recording this TV commercial at Expo, I got the microphone on the bed, on the duvet. I put a load of pillows all around it, even the extra ones in the wardrobe. And it was a pretty good room. And then you put the extra robe in my room, on the top. And just gave them a bunch of versions and did that. Oh, here's the one thing. Okay. that journey to Expo, I also got a message saying, "Can you record?" It was a kids' toy commercial. The amazing new Super Duper, brand new from Tomy, that kind of thing. And it was all very kidsy and bouncy. And they said, "Can you do it this afternoon? It's on TV tomorrow, all over the UK." In 20 minutes after that email came through, I had to walk to the gate to fly to Chicago. And so I'm in the hotel, I'm in the airport lounge, and I noticed a little private room with a stack of cushions. I'm thinking, so I just sent a message back saying, "Yes, I can." And I went into this little room, opened the laptop as I was walking towards there, plugged the mic in, gave them 3 versions. The first 2 were dreadful. The third one was good. I was good. I played it back. It was good. I sent it off. It was the time. And I then walked onto the plane, went to Expo, and the following morning that thing was all over the UK.
Wow.
But as a concise answer, if there's somebody that wants to podcast, do it. Be focused on what you want to do, whether it's a bunch of friends talking to each other. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, as we're proving right now. And you know what? You could end up becoming a regular part of many people's lives. It's like you said, you felt like you knew that guy, even though you'd never met him. There'll be people that you listen to regularly you'll be disappointed if they haven't released their latest show yet, or something will happen in the industry and you go, "Oh, I can't wait to find out what he says or she says." It's that. Yeah, exactly. So, I would say do it. Just do it.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It was so easy for us to come together. Canada, Australia, UK. We're all together in this global pandemic environment that we're all in, but we still get to talk. We still get to have a laugh. We still get to hear the crazy voices that you do. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Mark.
We're living the dream, Marty. Perhaps I'll go and shoot the left ramp.
Thank you very much, Mark. All the best.
Thanks, mate. There was Mark Silk all the way from the UK, proving to you how easy it is to connect with people via a podcast, even though we're doing it via video at the moment. But that's what it's about. Have a conversation, make them feel good. One point I wanted to make as well about bringing on a guest is, unlike Mark Silk, who's probably done a lot of interviews, he was very comfortable. Sometimes people haven't done interviews before, or they've not been on a podcast, and it might be their first time. So it's always good to manage their expectations, let them know how long the podcast is going to go for, let them know some of the questions, or all the questions if you want to, that are going to be asked, but also let them know that this thing's going to be edited. So if you say something wrong or you fumble your words, it's okay. We can edit that out. Just be yourself and have a conversation.
The one thing I always tell people, especially if they've never done an interview before or a podcast, and they tell me, or I sense that they're nervous, is that, it's no different than talking on the phone to somebody. We're just talking. That's it. We're just talking. And if you want to give them the questions in advance, that's great. Certainly ask, are there any topics you want to discuss, want to avoid, that kind of thing. But reassure them that there's going to be editing. Don't worry about mistakes. We can always fix that in post. Not a problem. But the main thing for me when I do an interview is I have kind of point form questions I want to get to. But the most important thing is not to stick to that order. It's to actually listen and listen what the person says, because it might take you on a different path. It might be something you didn't even think of, some point of interest, or it might change the order of what you're doing if it segues really nice. So listening is very important, but it's a lot of fun to have guests when you have a great one like Mark Silk on. It makes it a lot easier for sure, but that was a lot of fun, and it's that easy.
It is that easy. So we do, again, we've said we want people to get involved. Reach out to your podcasters, by the way. If you do like a podcast, send them an email. I think every episode they will say, hey, if you want to contact us, do it on Facebook or Instagram or email. Do it. We actually really appreciate emails, and we have conversations back and forth, and it's just another way to be able to connect with people.
Yeah, we have a pretty good social media presence and whatnot. We're certainly on Facebook under Final Round Pinball. We're on the Pinball Network. We have an Instagram account, which I believe is Final Round Pinball Podcast.
Correct.
I got it right.
Got it right. And Twitter is Final Round Pin.
And you can always email us, finalroundpinball@gmail.com. We'd love to give you any kind of feedback or any kind of advice. Welcome any comments, suggestions. We'll throw out the criticisms, or we'll look at them, one or the other. I haven't decided. And of course, sponsors too. If you're willing to sponsor our great podcast and you got the dough, all right, give us a call. No, hey, it's a lot of fun. And thanks for doing this. Thank you very much to Rob Burke for putting this together, because it is a crazy year here in 2020. But to do this virtual Pinball Expo, it brings us together. It makes us feel a little different. And quite honestly, when I go to Expo, I want to see all the different seminars, but there's pinball machines and there's so much to do. So, you know what? This is an aspect I didn't get to do. And thank you for everyone who contributed.
Yeah, absolutely. So enjoy the rest of the show, and thank you for watching.
All right. Take care.